Action! I've come to demand an apology.
But you give me the devil's alternative.
Ramesses is as boring to you as cricket is to me.
Look, there are two teams out there. One of them is trying to play cricket.
Are you threatening the board?
Call it what you like, but cricket in Australia will have 3 chiefs, no bloody Indians.
Bradman has reached his century. The crowd goes absolutely wild. Don Bradman, 101 not out. Australia 9 for 189, one of the greatest centuries.
Essentially, the story of Bodyline is about a tiny little nation down at the bottom of the earth, Australia, in a depression, and it's doing battle with its parent, England, in the very game of empire cricket.
The story traces 2 powerful adversaries, Douglas Jardine and Donald Bradman. In the early years, their roots would be firmly planted in the game for gentlemen. As young men, they would rewrite the laws of cricket. The game would become a battle, and a test series, a war between nations. The Bodyline tour was one of the most infamous of incidents in the history of the game of cricket. But it was not until decades after the furore which had surrounded it was long forgotten that the seeds of the drama were re-sown. Late in 1982, writer Terry Hayes was approached by producer Byron Kennedy with the idea of using the Bodyline story as the basis of a teleseries.
So, less than great enthusiasm, I got a book just to read what the outline of the story was, and I got totally caught up by it. I just realised that there was tremendous conflict in it, some wonderful characters, and it really wasn't about cricket. It was as much about the empire and British attitudes to Australia as it was about the game of cricket itself. So, given that I had all this enthusiasm for it, Byron was enthusiastic about it, we went to George Miller, who's the other part of Kennedy Miller, and said, well, this is an idea that we've got. And he said, cricket? And within a couple of hours we had him convinced too.
The thing that most attracted us to the story was that there was a character, Jardine, who had a fierce obsession, a fierce want that was unremitting. And when you've got characters like that, they always make great drama.
And so the writers and researchers went to work, and by the 1st of August, 1983, the project had finally taken shape. Over the next 12 weeks, nearly 100 actors, 3,000 extras, and 2 film crews totaling 77 technicians and artists were gathered together. And on the 2nd day of November, production began. 30,000 cups of coffee, 165,000 feet of film, and 6 months later, it was all over.
Okay, let's party! That's a wrap, everyone!
Bodyline was complete. The story had been told. This is the story of how these people made that story.
It has to be like, you know what I mean? You can't force it. He who would valiant be gains no disaster. There's no discouraged man shall make him once relent his first avowed intent to be a pilgrim. Whoso beset him round with dismal stories, no foe shall stay his mind, though he with giants fight, he will make good his
right to be a pilgrim. We know we at the end shall life inherit. Then fancies flee away, ah, dear not what men say. I'll labor night and day to be a pilgrim.
Differing amounts of hours.
One director directing 10 hours of fairly epic television is really going to sort of run out of steam.
You couldn't find four more different directors in a way. Their approach is utterly different. I personally found this very stimulating. It's something that you just had to keep in mind who was doing which scene, and as you worked on it yourself, as you learned the scene, for example, you would know that it was either George Ogilvy or Carl Schultz or Denny Lawrence or Lex Marinot. The workshop was very helpful for this. We got to know each other in the workshop.
We brought actors in very early, even before we started writing scripts, to talk about the general story and what the world was and who the characters were.
I want you to do the sort of thing that you're sitting there saying to yourself, he must be joking. I mean, we don't do this sort of thing. We're actors, after all. Can you see what I'm getting at? That's what's happening to the cricketers on board ship. That is what is happening. I remember, if you can think back to your, you know, in a sense, to your amateur days, that is what happened when people had to get up on stage and thought, this is the end. I'm going to die if I go 2 more steps. And you went those 2 steps, and you looked awful.
What's your name? My name is King Neptune. What are you going to... you know?
The setting for this workshop is an ocean liner bound for Australia. The actors playing the English cricket team are developing a scene where they put on a show for their fellow passengers.
To the sharks! To the shark!
What may appear to be a group of men dressed in strange clothes doing silly things is actually serious work. A bond is built up between them, and from it, an understanding of how they can best work together.
Damaging the woodwork, you should do the dance of the dying duck immediately. Quack, 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 quack. Now turn your faces, my Lord Neptune, for the final sentence. Die! Quack, 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 quack.
From the hundreds of ideas explored in workshop, only a handful materialize before the camera.
Action! And who do you bring before me, O grey nurse?
4 bounded for sentencing, your witness.
Of what are they accused?
Singing Australian songs in the shower. Bring them forth. The plum of the pudding.
Sir Harold of Nottingham.
The Les of the 3 Stumps.
Sir Wally of Ham. I sentence you to the Tower of Apples.
The idea of a madcap King Neptune punishing his nautical subjects appears in the final product. It is the legacy of workshop.
It's such a key scene, this, isn't it? It's the beginnings of Bodyline, the beginnings, true beginnings of you two, and of Captain of England.
Now it's up to us. No, it's not.
Now it's up to us to find a new approach.
Now it's up to us to find a new approach.
So many directors appear not to want to rehearse actors. They're feeling that perhaps if they don't rehearse them, that means they'll get a spontaneous reaction from them when they get in front of a camera. But I wondered whether, in fact, one could go far beyond that and actually go through a rehearsal period, a study period, if you like, whereby the actor, actress studies, rehearses, knows the role, in a sense, backwards, and then, through a sort of process, chucks it away.
I have to think of Jardine, the character, Jardine as in the drama, as opposed to Jardine in actuality, and it's a very different thing. And although as an actor you have to, your natural desire is to try and bring those two together as much as you can. It's very difficult, and finally you have to throw out what you've read because you'll remember it anyway, not think of that, and concentrate on what you have in front of you.
In other words, once they're in front of camera, they don't even think about it. It never crosses their mind to think about what they rehearsed or what they learned, so they get themselves into a state simply of being with the camera.
Now we have to find a whole new approach. That's the challenge. Who is there can meet it?
Well,
England has some fine skippers.
Who? Chapman? Wyatt? They had their chances this summer. Inadequate. Yesterday's men playing yesterday's game. You know, you have many fine qualities yourself, Douglas. As a man and as a cricketer. Qualities that could be of great use to England. But it's very difficult until you become a county captain for you to be considered.
Yes, I know that.
Has Fender ever indicated to you how long he might remain as captain of Surrey?
No, my lord, we've never discussed it.
Would he stand down in your favor?
I don't know. I'd never ask him. He's my greatest friend.
Not even it meant a chance of being captain of England?
The captain of England is so far beyond you. Be careful, Hugo, you know? So far beyond, so that when Harris actually says, not even if it gave you a chance to captain England...
Do you want a cappuccino?
No. No. What do you... I mean, what a broadside. It's a very difficult one, Hugo.
Yeah.
And I think you've got to spend the time to be shocked. Is that what he's getting at? See, that's what the whole evening's been about. He's revealed it. He's done it. Not even the chance of becoming captain of England.
Not even if it meant a chance of being captain of England?
No, not even then. I'm sorry.
Oh, don't be. No, don't be. No. I admire loyalty.
I like the end.
Yes.
Cigar second.
Oh, thank you. Oh, here, take the thing. I'll be virtuous. Necessity is what?
No virtue like necessity.
No virtue like necessity. I want to talk, that's what I brought you here for.
And moves out and cuts.
Yeah. We've created, through a real character, Lord Harris, one of the key figures at the MCC, a man who provides Jardine with his motivation. This was a very tough scene for Hugo, who plays Jardine, because the whole scene for him is reaction. The toughest, but perhaps the most important thing for the actor, reacting, listening to what's going on.
There are men who will oppose you, but they are weak men, mean men. They are frightened of your power. Now, be hard, be audacious. For yours, audace.
Harris, on his deathbed, calls Jardine in, and he fires Jardine up, so that from that moment on, Jardine is a man obsessed with the idea of winning at whatever cost. Totally Machiavellian, you know, the end justifies the means.
I am not here to win friends. I'm here to win the Ashes.
He's moving too far down his wicket.
I'll warn him.
Don't do that. Run him out. But it's customary to give a warning. Not on the village green now. Run him out.
I cannot play your way, Douglas, my friend.
You will never play Test cricket again.
What's wrong with you?
It's the heat, Mr. Jardine.
Forget the bloody heat. What's the ball?
The board have simply asked me for a reassurance that you modify your tactics.
You have no right to discuss our tactics with the Australians.
There's no need to raise your voice with me. I'm just reporting what they want.
Well, you seem to be prosecuting it with unusual vigor.
My dear chap, I have made my position perfectly clear. I've tried to counsel you, I've asked you, and you've just thrown it back in my face. No surprise to me that the Australians want it stopped. And I must say I agree with them.
Whatever your personal feelings, you are the MCC manager. Need I explain to you where your loyalty lies?
How dare you? My loyalty's not in doubt. For the last time, you are being asked to stop.
And for the last time, no.
Douglas, I implore you, please,
please refrain from these bodyline tactics.
That expression is an abomination! I am using legitimate leg theory.
Douglas Jardine, the English captain, has developed his bodyline strategy into an art form. As the Australian batsmen, already battered and bruised, buckle under the onslaught, the English team takes a 2-1 lead in the best-of-5 tests.
I don't feel he would have felt any guilt about what happened. I don't think there was any need to, as far as he was concerned. People said when he got out onto the field, he was a different man. I think he could go out onto the field, and when he came back off the field, he could relax out of that cricket persona.
It was 1929, the Jazz Age, and our lives spun from one carefree moment to the next. Every day we stretched out our hands further, trying to gather into our arms all the glittering prizes of our youth. And yet there was a brittleness in our laughter, a fever to our lives.
Great.
Although their names only appear at the end of the production, attached to such enigmatic titles as Gaffer, Best Boy or Key Grip, a good crew is every bit as essential as a good cast. After each successful shot, the focus puller checks the film to make sure it is not scratched by dust or fine hairs which can get caught up in the camera's mechanism. Sometimes hours can be spent setting up for a shot which will only appear for seconds on screen. For this picnic scene, tracks are laid so the camera can move smoothly around the actors. This kind of hardware is the responsibility of the grip. The camera is mounted on this miniature railway carriage known as a dolly. When nature does not provide the right amount of shade, the lighting technicians, the gaffer and the best boy must create it. Filters are meticulously prepared and placed over the camera lens to give just the right color to the scene. The sound recordist and his boom operator unload their recording equipment. The clapper loader loads the film into a camera magazine, using a black bag with 2 holes for her arms, a kind of portable darkroom, which ensures that the film is not exposed to light. The actors wait while final preparations are made. The slate which identifies each shot is marked up. The lighting cameraman measures the exact amount of light falling on the scene. The boom operator checks that the microphone will not be in shot. The distance of the actors from the camera is marked, then checked again with a measuring tape so the action will be in focus. And finally, when every department has checked and rechecked, the filmmaking machine goes into action. Each crew member and each actor must perform his or her task without a slip-up, or the whole process begins again.
Dean Samler, who's the lighting cameraman I worked with before on the Dismissal, the wonderful cameraman, and Owen Williams, also the production designer. And I think those two people particularly define the look of a program such as this, especially where there are several directors working, Dean with his lighting and Owen with his set design.
The leap from Owen's imagination to reality is made with the assistance of a small team of labourers, carpenters, buyers and painters. The finely worked gold leaf walls of an Indian ballroom are slapped on in a matter of hours. Majestic columns of pink and crimson marble are made from plywood and vinyl. They await only a coat of gloss paint to bring them to life. Bunches of brightly coloured ribbons and a few authentic antiques are added to the set. And suddenly it becomes a ballroom in colonial India at the turn of the century. Simply by rearranging the columns, repainting the walls and changing details on doors and windows, the same set represents 4 vastly different locations. Here it is redressed as a reception room on an ocean liner. Then it appears as the office of the Australian Cricket Board.
You're saying that I can promote sports goods and broadcast cricket comments on the wireless, but I can't write about it in the newspaper.
And finally, it becomes the Lord's Long Room in England.
Here we have a false perspective painting. It's on canvas, and with the camera locked off at the end of the set, we are able to create an illusion of the actual long room at Lord's.
Well, troublesome times, gentlemen.
Yes, another riot today in Manchester.
Well, little wonder. Unemployment nearly 20%. I was thinking rather more of Bradman.
Max Cullen plays sports journalist Chuck Cooper. Every detail of his character, right down to the nicotine stains on his fingers, is carefully constructed to create an accurate and believable portrait.
Mr. Packer's busy.
You want to see me? We're in big trouble. You heard about the board's decision. They're not going to let him play because he's going to honour his contract to you.
Bradman's our one chance of keeping the Ashes.
That's it. Yeah, that's the second time you tried to get your suspenders into camera.
There, I did too.
Just.
Yeah, it's a flash. Now this is the big one.
Unfortunately, it's just there.
The whole of Australia worships the man. It's not just Sydney. He's all a lot of them have got to brighten up their lives.
When you pass these two journalists with the words here, you know, and you use the words here and here and here, then don't make this a move. You know, rather, it didn't exist rather than think you got that and you got that and you got that. Pause. Then look at him, I think, Max. Really look at him. I think, to me, that's a moment before I don't need to tell you, because there's a different quality about that. There's a different quality about that whole section. Yeah. It has a slightly maudlin feel about it.
So, observer. And I know. I don't have to tell you.
But without the Don, we might as well burn the bales now and hand the ashes to Jardine on a silver platter. I know I don't have to tell you how hard times are. Your newspapers carry stories every day of the destitute, the unemployed, the helpless, the homeless, the heartache.
You've got to keep on going, otherwise he'll interrupt you. You know that nervousness once again of, you know, you want him to say something but the right thing, and you know he's not going to say the right thing, so you've got to keep on going. That sense of urgency.
They're going to have me face it up, so I'll recharge and I'll have another shot at it.
Exactly. It's exactly that.
There's nothing to lose now.
It's a grim picture. We're a nation on the verge of losing all hope. Now you can't deny us a fellow Australian who triumphs in the teeth of adversity. This country needs heroes, and that's what Don Bradman is. They're heroes.
During the Depression, this country needed heroes very badly, and Bradman was absolutely ready-made. Not only was he a genius in the cricket field, but he was young Australian, born here, and became for Australia a symbol of hope, a symbol of the future, if you like. One of the most important figures of myth that this country has ever created. And as such, when Cooper talks to Packer in such an intense way, that is absolutely typical of how most of the country felt about Bradman himself.
Come and listen to the wireless.
Just listen to this.
He had a sense of his own destiny very early in his own lifetime, you know. He sort of realised, you know, that he had this great talent, that he had this great ability, and that he was destined to become one of the greats, if not the greatest batsman ever.
He's got no major conflicts in his life. He knows what he wants, he knows how to get it, and he does. So there it ends. But by contrast, Jardine's conflicts and obsession makes him a very much more interesting, dramatically interesting character to explore.
Jardine was sort of the man alone. He had his cricket and that was it. Sort of, with the Bradmans, there was all that sort of thing which allowed you to do, you know, it was just that environment of encouragement and love that enabled you to do anything, and he did.
As far as Don, Bradman and Jesse being a team, I think the whole thing is developed early in the scripts. You see them not as being individuals, but being a very sort of close-knit twosome. They loved each other very much, they liked each other very much, they were best of friends. We are very great friends as well, aren't we, darling?
Yeah, mate. Yeah. Mate. No, mate. See, I don't think they had, I mean, we didn't get any nicknames from them at all, did we? No. See, I doubt somehow Don and Jesse wouldn't seem to be like that. Do you? Their relationship seemed to have a much more, but it was a much more, on a much more intellectual level. Strange, you know.
Okay, let's go. Clear the car, thanks.
10-9 in.
Don't let those fools on the control board get to you. They're just petty bureaucrats, full of their own importance. And I can't expect you to give up that newspaper contract to earn half that money playing cricket. If they don't allow you to play because of some silly little rule, then millions of Australians will come down and drag them out of their offices and throw them off the Sydney Harbour Bridge.
It's not just them. You know, they all reckon he's mad bringing 5 fast bowlers out here because our wickets are slow. But he's up to something, and I don't know what it is.
Mounting the action vehicle on a trailer is one solution to filming vehicles in motion, although Bodyline's assistant directors may beg to differ. Theirs is the tedious task of keeping the 1932 landscape free of 1984 vehicles. Another way of achieving a smooth getaway on film is somewhat more primitive, but just as effective. A train rushing through the night rocks back and forth with the combined weight of the crew's caterer and the key grip. Shadows from the surrounding landscape rush past the window with the assistance of the electrician, the best boy and the gaffer, armed with a single branch and 2 white boards. And the graceful motion of a wedding waltz is captured by mounting the camera on a revolving platform, with the actors dancing rather precariously on the other end. After rain or heavy morning dew, the pitch can be too wet for play. The problem is solved by using a helicopter to dry out the field. This may seem a little excessive, but the cost of having cast, crew and equipment wait around for the sun to do its job is far greater. Another problem is getting the cricket sequences to appear unrehearsed.
We used the slips, the catch and cradle, to introduce an element of unpredictability. What we were finding was that when we just had somebody throwing a ball at the batsman, they knew where the ball was coming from. And of course that doesn't always happen on the cricket field. The very nature of the cradle means the ball comes off, and that's what happens in cricket. They know the ball is going to hit the pitch, but they're not exactly certain of how it's going to come off, at what sort of speed, at what height, or at what angle.
In the pursuit of authenticity, the team also studied old news footage from the Bodyline tour.
With the archival footage, it was useful because it gave us a starting point. It was also a slight disadvantage because the footage of Woodfull being hit and Oldfield being hit are probably some of the best known cricket footage in the world. We knew we had a responsibility there to make it look comparable.
On with the game. Again we see the determined Larwood making a fresh attack.
Had he bowled slow motion on the field, we might have won the test. Oldfield, who had been batting splendidly, bit the dust in this little... A fast ball caught him on the temple, and he staggers away from the wicket. So this is cricket.
It's very effective news footage, and what we had to try and do was turn the same incident into drama, so that we're not standing back in the crowd, but we're actually out there on the field with Woodfull and Oldfield when they get hit.
It's hit here. Ball over there.
Turnover. Red 620, take one.
Action.
The batsmen are getting hit so often that the crowd's in a very nasty mood. It's Oldfield now to face up to Larwood.
Any successful illusion, the impact of this scene depends very much on attention to detail. The ball which hits Oldfield looks like a cricket ball, but is filled with foam rubber so as not to harm the actor. The lump which it causes is created by a makeup artist with a small mound of mortician's wax and a great deal of skill.
Is that latex?
Mortician's wax.
Mortician's wax.
Wonderful.
Authenticity is one of the things that each and every department strive for when making a period film. We tried to create as much as we could the clothes as they were, because they've changed dramatically, particularly in cricket. I thought, well, cricket clothes are cricket clothes. They're creams. That's what everybody thinks. Different shape, maybe. But boots, for instance, was the first thing. Went along to a cricket store and they're all rubber and stripes and flashes and signed by Dennis Lilly. So what they wore were boots exactly like this. I found a man called Mr. Baxter, and his dad used to make the cricket boots. He said, I think Dad kept the original last he used to make them with. And so he dug up out of the factory the last that his father used to make the cricket boots and made these cricket boots for us. We could only afford 15 pairs. So then what we did is we put an ad in the paper, and a lot of people sent in these. So we started off with that, and then we did our own research from there. This is a 20s piece, and you can see it's quite elaborate. It was worn by Dame Nellie Melba on stage in Melbourne. It's quite gala. It's got a lot of work in it. Some rather fat rich lady in England may wear that. And then there's this dress, which is worn by Edith. It was all rotting down the back. Jenny dyed some fabric to the original colour. She then unpicked every piece around here, all the flowers, everything, and re-stitched it back together by doing all this bow work. All this is all done by hand. Everything you can see is actually all put together by hand. It took about 2 weeks.
That 2 weeks' work appears for only minutes on screen and becomes just another detail in the construction of a scene.
Oh, hello.
Good evening. You're a friend of Percy's?
Yes.
Through cricket?
Oh, no. I think cricket's a game for overgrown schoolboys.
Ah.
And that brings us to the period of Alexander the Great and his liberation of the Nile Valley. A period which had an enormous effect on the culture of the areas that then existed, not least, of course, in its art and statuary. But before we go on, let me say that one of the most enjoyable aspects of my work is to listen to amateur Egyptologists, to hear their views on work such as this. Perhaps Mr.
Jardine. Douglas Jardine.
Perhaps Mr. John.
Every scene is filmed over and over again, each time with a new angle or a new shot size. And in the cutting room, editor Richard Francis Bruce must choose the best shots and join them together into a coherent sequence.
listen to amateur Egyptologists, to hear their...
This is a hard scene to cut because it's all on reactions. It's really... What he's talking about isn't that important, it's what he's saying. And he's trying to woo her. It's quite humorous.
Humour generally means spontaneity, and of course when you are trying to manufacture it, it's a lot more difficult to achieve that spontaneity. So I guess it's largely the rhythm of it, the way you cut it together. It's not until you have played it, until you have tried it this way and that way, and a lot of it is in the way the scene is actually placed together.
Egyptology for many different reasons.
The people in the audience don't have the faintest idea what he's talking about. They think he's talking about something, a painting. He starts talking about a painting that he saw in a friend's, or a sculpture he saw in a friend's place. And they all think he's for real, but he's talking about her.
But my interest in the subject was first aroused by beauty, the beauty of a woman. It was a female figure, not at all dissimilar to this, which I saw standing in a friend's library. Like the figure on display, the pose was provocative. Although taller and perhaps less classically beautiful, it too boasted the same intangible quality, that thing which throughout the ages has attracted man to woman. In physical terms, the similarities are quite startling. The hair tumbling down the neck, the slope of the shoulder merging perfectly into the fall of the breast. In both cases, the eye is irresistibly drawn to the finely turned ankle, the gentle curve of the calf, the full roundness of the thigh.
Edith, who's based on a true character, was a most unusual woman for her period. Not only did she have a university degree, she had a university degree in Egyptology.
I think it was 925, the actual tomb of Tutankhamun was dug up, so that it was, to be studying Egyptology at this particular time was very exciting if you were a serious sort of Egyptologist.
She was probably the only woman that Douglas Jardine ever met who stood up to him.
Jardine was thought of in a particular way. He was obsessive. People found him, he became the most hated man to set foot in Australia, for one thing. He was just so determined to find ways of faulting Bradman, to find ways of winning him out. He just became so obsessed by this that she's important in terms of showing another side to him. And she says early on, she says he was also generous and loyal and caring, and he had a sense of humour, but the media never showed those things.
She takes us through the story from a very, very human perspective. The whole thing could have been pretty much Boys' Own Annual stuff, you know, like a group of blokes all getting dressed up in white and pads and going out to beat the living daylights out of each other on a cricket pitch. And of course, cricket isn't like that. It has that element of gladiatorial contest to it, but it has a much richer life than that.
Facade, built on the foreshores of Sydney Harbour, appears in the script in India, Britain and Australia. The art department team must reproduce each detail of its appearance, right down to the rust under its sea-weary portholes. It's hard to believe that this fragile scaffolding can appear so thoroughly convincing on screen. The art department must also provide anything from a hedge of hydrangeas in full bloom to a tank stand where the future Mrs. Bradman watches her young hero perfect his batting style.
Yeah, cut. You are reacting before the ball actually has a chance to come at you, Mark. Just wait until the first ball comes before you start reacting.
In this scene, where Lord Harris surveys the cricket fields from the window of the long room, time and money have not allowed the art department to complete the room with an appropriate ceiling or proper window frame. They are added later, as matte artist William Hughes explains.
We take a slide from a frame of the film. I project the slide up onto a board, then I trace around the ceiling plus the window sill. From that, I trace that onto the board, draw it up, paint it. It's then put on film, and the film is transferred to videotape.
In the video lab, the image of William's painting and the image of Lord Harris at the window are joined together by means of computer technology. Sometimes it is a matter of trial and error to get the matte painting to match the action. In this case, the window surrounds match well, but the ceiling is out of perspective. Other times, action and painting match first go. This painting of the second floor of a Nottinghamshire pub drops onto the action below without a hitch. The final step in the creation of Bodyline is taken by the composer. Chris Neal explains his unusual method of writing musical score.
I'm looking at the picture as I compose the music. In fact, the writing stage, a stage where I actually write the notes out, happens sometime later. It doesn't happen at the outset. In other words, I let the music be dictated to by the image, rather than sitting down and writing the notes out and then going and recording it in a studio and seeing how it works with the image. Sometimes we do the sounds electronically. Sometimes we use orchestral instruments. In various areas we combine the two. So there are many combinations, and it really depends what the image is asking for.
Yes! Back to the bowler's end, and Bradman dives. I think he's safe, and Don Bradman has reached his century. The crowd goes absolutely wild. Don Bradman, 101 not out. Australia 9 for 189, one of the greatest centuries ever seen on this ground.
Well, you've just had a taste of Bodyline with its stars, its production, and a few of its scenes. Now await the thrill of the real thing, 7:30 Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, and Thursday night. For next week is Bodyline Week on 10. Next, Ann Sanders with the Eyewitness News, and then Johnny Young and the Young Talent Time team.
Just listen to this.
I'm sure builders do